Dad's new wife persuaded him to choose her perfect child's match over my academic achievement, but he was stunned when the truth about that evening came out. Be me. Some moments in life change you forever. Not because they're dramatic, not because they're loud, but because they confirm something you were always afraid to admit. My moment came on graduation day, standing in a sea of caps and gowns, scanning the crowd for a face that never showed up. Always knew deep down I wasn't a priority to my father. But knowing something and feeling it are completely different. Before that day, I gave him benefit of the doubt, told myself he tried in his own way, that the distance between us wasn't intentional, just circumstance. But standing there, surrounded by families cheering for their kids, the truth hit me like a truck. It was a choice, and he had made it. My life before that moment was a balancing act, trying to exist in a home that wasn't really mine. After my mom passed when I was 14, Dad remarried quickly. Too quickly. Enter Melissa, my stepmother. She was the kind of woman who smiled sweetly in public, but controlled everything behind closed doors. She had a son, Tyler, 2 years younger than me. Tyler was the golden child. His interests, achievements, needs, they were all that mattered. My dad, once my hero, became someone else under Melissa's influence. He wasn't cruel to me, not in an obvious way. He just faded, became a spectator in my life, rather than a participant. At first, I fought for his attention. Told him about school, about my dreams, about plans for the future, but conversations always got cut short. Melissa calling from another room, Tyler needing a ride to practice, something always pulling him away. So I stopped trying, focused on school instead, poured myself into grades, into my future. If I couldn't have my father's approval, I'd at least have success. When I got my college acceptance letter, dared to hope maybe this time he'd be proud of me. Graduation was supposed to be that moment. It wasn't. When ceremony ended, walked out into crowded parking lot. Already knew, didn't need to check my phone, didn't need to hear an excuse. He wasn't there, and that was the day everything changed. In the days following graduation, a heavy silence settled over me. No anger, no dramatic outburst, just quiet, crushing realization. My father had made his choice, and I wasn't part of it. Should have expected it, but expectation doesn't soften the blow of confirmation. Wasn't until later that I found out exactly where he'd been. Single message arrived on my phone. Late that evening, hours after ceremony had ended. A casual, almost dismissive explanation. He had gone to Tyler's baseball game instead. His son, his real son in Melissa's eyes, had a tournament final, and she had convinced him that was more important. My milestone weighed against a game, and I had lost. The sheer absurdity settled in like a dull ache. Wasn't asking for much, just one day. Just one moment of acknowledgement. Replayed the memories in my mind. The moments leading up to this. Times he promised to show up but never did. Times I sat in the audience alone, watching peers celebrate with their parents, while I swallowed down disappointment. Moments when I told myself next time will be different. But it never was. What stung more than his absence was the ease with which he had been convinced. Melissa didn't have to fight to make him choose Tyler over me. He did it willingly, without hesitation. Without even realizing what it meant, stared at my phone, at his brief apology, at pathetic attempt to downplay it. I'll make it up to you, as if that were possible, as if this was something that could be fixed with dinner, or a forced conversation, or a half-hearted hug. Didn't reply, because in that moment I knew this wasn't something I was going to forgive. Had no idea that very soon my father would realize just how much he had lost. For first time in my life, didn't bother trying to hide disappointment, didn't send a forced reply. Didn't pretend I understood. Let the silence hang between us, heavy and suffocating. For a while thought that would be the end of it. That father would move on oblivious, and I would simply disappear from his life, without him noticing. But then something happened. Something I never saw coming. A week after graduation, scrolling mindlessly on my phone, when I saw it, a photo, simple, insignificant snapshot. Except it wasn't insignificant at all. It was a picture of Tyler's baseball team, celebrating their championship win. Team huddled together on field, arms draped around each other, grinning. And standing in background, watching from sidelines, was my father. At first just stared, feeling that familiar sting of rejection settle in chest. But then noticed something strange. Tyler wasn't in the picture. Confused. Scrolled through the comments, and that's when found out the truth. Tyler hadn't played in the game. He had been benched the entire time. Something inside me twisted. Wasn't even sure how to process it. Whether to laugh, cry, or feel completely numb. He had missed my biggest milestone for nothing, and he didn't even know. A bitter thought crept into my mind. Would he have made a different choice if he knew Tyler wouldn't play? Would it have even mattered? Or was I always going to be second place? Closed my phone. Let the realization settle. My father didn't just disappoint me. He had been tricked, manipulated into abandoning me for something meaningless. And soon he would find out the truth. And when he did, everything would change. For days debated whether to tell him. Part of me wanted to throw the truth in his face, to watch the weight of his decision finally sink in. But another part of me held back. Would it even matter? Would knowing Tyler never played change anything? Would it make him see how easily he had been manipulated? Or would he just find another excuse? Didn't have to decide. The truth found him without my help. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. Was at home, still avoiding his calls, when got a text from my aunt, my dad's sister. She had been at my graduation, sitting in the crowd when he was supposed to be there. She had seen me standing alone, scanning audience for a face that never appeared. She had seen everything, and she was furious. She had just spoken to my dad, and he knew. Apparently, he had been casually recounting Tyler's big win. When she interrupted him, she asked point blank if he even knew that Tyler had been benched the entire game, that he had skipped his own child's graduation for nothing. Silence. She told me she had never heard my dad so quiet before. And then the excuses started. He stammered through some weak defense. Something about how Melissa had insisted, how she made it sound like a once-in-a-lifetime event. But his voice had wavered. And my aunt told me she could hear it, the regret creeping in. For the first time, I think he actually felt it. He had spent years convincing himself that choosing Tyler over me wasn't really a choice at all, that it was just the natural order of things, that I understood, that I didn't need him as much. But now there was no way to justify this, because there was no argument, no explanation, no excuse that could change the truth. He had abandoned me for nothing, and now he had to live with it. But what I didn't know yet, what I couldn't know, was that this realization was only the beginning. Because what happened next, it would change everything. For a while, heard nothing from my dad. No calls, no texts, just silence. But I could feel it. The weight of what he had done was finally sinking in. Then out of nowhere, a message arrived. Short, uneasy. We need to talk. Didn't respond right away. Because what was left to say? He had made his choice, and now he had to live with it. But something in my gut told me. This wasn't just an apology. Something had shifted. A few days later, my aunt called me again. That's when I learned that things at home were falling apart. After my dad found out the truth, he confronted Melissa, and she panicked. At first, she tried to play dumb, acting surprised, as if she had no idea Tyler didn't play. But my dad wasn't stupid. He had spoken to other parents at the game. He had seen Tyler on the bench himself. And when he pushed, Melissa cracked. She admitted it. She had known all along. She had known Tyler wasn't going to play. She had known the game meant nothing. And yet she had still convinced him to miss my graduation. Not because she thought the game was important. Not because she believed Tyler needed him there. But because she didn't want him to come for me. It wasn't about Tyler at all. It was about control. About making sure my dad stayed wrapped around her finger. About making sure I stayed in second place. And now my dad had to face the truth. That he had let himself be played. That he had spent years ignoring the manipulation, pretending it wasn't real. But now there was no denying it, and I could only imagine what that realization was doing to him. But what I didn't expect, what I never saw coming, was what he would do next. Because when the truth finally hit him, he didn't just apologize. He did something I never thought he would. And it changed everything. For years, my father had been blind. Or maybe he had just chosen to be. It was easier that way. Easier to believe that Melissa wasn't manipulating him. Easier to convince himself that Tyler simply needed more attention. Easier to justify every broken promise, every missed event, every time he turned his back on me. But now he couldn't ignore it. The truth had shattered whatever illusion he had been clinging to. And once a lie unravels, you start to see all the others. Every moment Melissa had twisted reality to keep him under her control. Every time she had nudged him away from me, step by step, until I was nothing more than an afterthought. And it was too much. According to my aunt, my father snapped. Not in anger, not in a loud, dramatic way, but in a way that was far worse. He looked at Melissa, really looked at her, and for the first time, he saw her for what she was. And he was done. She tried to backpedal, tried to downplay what she had done, acting as if it had just been a misunderstanding. But the damage was already done. The lie had been exposed, and my father wasn't playing along anymore. For the first time in years, he stood up to her. He told her that things were going to change, that he was going to fix things. that he was going to fix what he had broken with me. And Melissa, she didn't take it well. She had spent years molding him into someone she could control, into someone who would always choose her family over me. And now that control was slipping, she fought, she screamed. She told him that Tyler was his son too, that he was being unfair, that I was manipulating him into feeling guilty. But for once he didn't listen. For once he made a choice, a real one. And what happened next? Melissa wasn't going to let it go. She had spent too much time shaping him into the perfect puppet, and she wasn't going to lose him without a fight. And I had no idea just how far she was willing to go. Melissa wasn't the type to lose. She had spent years making sure my dad saw the world through her version of reality. And now that the illusion had cracked, she wasn't going to let him walk away easily. I didn't hear from my dad directly, but my aunt kept me updated. And from what she told me, things were getting ugly. Melissa panicked. She told my dad he was being manipulated, that I was doing this on purpose, that I was turning him against her. Just because I was jealous. She cried. She screamed. She made herself the victim. But this time my dad wasn't falling for it. For the first time in years, he pushed back. He told her the truth, that he had been choosing Tyler over me for too long, that he had let her dictate who mattered in his life, that he was done being blind to it. And that's when she did something no one saw coming. She told him to choose, me or her, not in a way that sounded like an ultimatum. Not directly. Melissa was too smart for that. Instead, she played the long game, pulling Tyler into the conversation, weaponizing his emotions. She made it about family, about how my dad couldn't just suddenly switch sides. After years of putting Tyler first, she guilted him, told him he was betraying both of them. And my father, who had spent so long being controlled, so long bending to whatever she wanted, hesitated, even after everything, even after the truth. And that was when I knew, no matter how much he regretted missing my graduation, no matter how much he hated what Melissa had done, a part of him would always be weak. He wanted to fix things. I could feel that, but he also wanted an easy fix, one where he could have both of us, where he wouldn't have to make a real choice. But some things you can't undo, and I wasn't going to sit around, waiting for him to finally decide I was worth it, because I had already made my choice. And after what happened next, he would have to live with mine. I wish I could say my father stood his ground, that he finally truly broke free of Melissa's control, that he chose me, not out of guilt, not because he had been caught in a lie, but because he wanted to. But life doesn't work like that. I knew deep down that he wanted to fix things. He wanted to make amends, to rebuild what he had spent years tearing down, but he also wanted to keep his old life intact. He wanted both of us, me and Melissa, me and Tyler. He wanted a clean slate, an easy reconciliation, where we all just move forward, like none of this had happened. But it did happen, and I couldn't just forget that. So when he finally called me, when he finally worked up the nerve to try and talk, I didn't pick up, let it go to voicemail. And when I finally listened to it, I realized he still didn't get it. He apologized. He really did. He said he was sorry for missing my graduation, that he understood now how much it must have hurt me. But there was no real ownership of it. He framed it like an accident, a mistake, as if he had just been caught up in the moment and had made a bad call, as if this was the first time. He said he wanted to make things right, that he wanted us to be a family again. But what he didn't say was that he had left Melissa, that he had cut her influence out of his life, that he had finally truly chosen to be my father again, because he hadn't, and that told me everything I needed to know. So I made my own choice. I sent him a single text. I don't need you to fix things. I needed you to be there when it mattered. And you weren't. And then I moved on. I focused on myself. I left behind the years of waiting, of hoping, of making excuses for a father who had always put me second. I built a life without him. I thrived without him. And maybe one day, when he realizes that I no longer need him at all, that's when it will finally hit him some choices you don't get to undo.